USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. Jim, there's been a lot of speculation and a lot of questions about what's going on with the NCAA tournaments. We're going right to the horse's mouth on this one.
And joining us on this week's USCHO Spotlight, he's the Associate Athletic Director at Omaha. He's also the chair of the Men's NCAA Division I Ice Hockey Committee. That's Mike Kemp. Mike, we are about a month away from the NCAA tournament right now, which seems really short because some teams have only been on the ice playing for as few as 6 weeks at this point. But what can you tell us about this tournament? We know it's going to have to look different, feel different, even selecting teams for it is going to be radically different. You guys have been, as a committee, have been meeting. What can you tell us at this point?
Well, I think there's a lot of things I think that are going to be able to be communicated, and in the short, in the near future. At this point in time, I think we know that the tournament is going to be operated as it has in years past with 4 regional sites. Those are predetermined sites. Each conference is going to have one automatic qualifier, and the conference will dictate whether that is their regular season champion or, as has been in the past traditionally done, as a conference playoff champion named as the automatic qualifier. So those are going to be the things that are present. We know that the Frozen Four will be in Pittsburgh on the dates that it's scheduled to be. So from that standpoint, I think we understand that we're in a position where things will be as normal as they possibly can, going into the tournament.
One thing I know is on the mind of many fans of many teams. Most of these fans have not seen their teams play in person all season. And I know that there's still some time between now and the tournament where regulations state by state can change. But what is the possibility of having fans in attendance for any of these events, from the regionals right through to the Frozen Four?
Well, I think, again, you hit the nail on the head. Many of the regulations and rules that will dictate attendance policies at the various regionals or at the Frozen Four are going to be dictated by the local health department and either the county or the state, depending on who's got the jurisdiction in that area. But the NCAA has determined that 25% capacity will be the number for all spring and winter championships. So they're going to limit attendance, if it is at all possible, to at a maximum of 25% capacity. Looking at that, it appears that we will have at least one site, Fargo being a site that's already open with the regional, where they'll be able to accommodate that plus, although the NCAA will dictate what will be the limit. But Fargo, of course, in North Dakota is an open area. The other sites, again, will be dictated, and hopefully will be able to open up to some measure of attendance other than family and friends between now and either the regional or the Frozen Four, as both are really waiting for direction from the state or from the county.
One question that I think is on our minds here, we know that the University of New Hampshire pulled their bid from Manchester this year. They were supposed to host at the Verizon Wireless Arena in Manchester, a site that has hosted the regional a number of times. What can you tell us about finding a replacement for that regional? Do you have to keep it in that general area? Can you move it geographically to another place that might be more open to hosting? How difficult at such a late point in the game is it to find a replacement?
It's interesting because when that first became known to us, there was a lot of discussion within just our group about the various options, and knowing that in the past few years, there has been a West Regional in Allentown. So that's not very West, as we would all say. But so the thought was, well, do we put it, is there some place out West that could be hosting that? But then the reality came in that in this year particularly, where we're really interested more in obviously safety, in keeping student athletes in a position where they're less exposed via travel. It became pretty important for us to look at a site that would regionally be more matching Manchester. So the NCAA, not our committee, but the NCAA went out and have been canvassing a couple of spots, and they do have a couple of spots that are strong possibilities. I would expect an announcement in the next several days, not weeks, but several days, as to a location, but it will be in the East. We're not going to look at another regional position outside of the East Coast.
I remember back, and I know you were coaching at the time, and back after 9/11, and that tournament, the NCAA did everything in its power to keep teams off of airplanes, keep teams as close to their home campus as possible when they were playing in the regionals. Is that going to be an approach used again this year as you try to keep some teams off of airplanes, out of air travel, to try to, avoid, shipping a team from, say, Denver out to Bridgeport, Connecticut?
I think that will be a consideration. We have discussed it. As one of the things to be considered when we start to look at how we structure the regionals as far as who goes where. But I don't know that it's going to be an overriding factor. I think it's going to be a factor. The idea of being able to keep teams where they can travel by bus is attractive to everybody. Unfortunately, we've got a couple of sites. I don't say unfortunately, but we have, let's say Loveland is not a site where outside of DU and Air Force and CC, bus travel might be a little more difficult for most teams to get there. So we're going to have some teams on planes, and then it's a case of determining who goes where by airplane as opposed to being able to bus. But we know that, for example, Fargo is convenient to many of the teams from both the WCHA, Big Ten, and CHC that could all travel there easily by bus. So, there are going to be those considerations, but I don't know that it's going to be something that will be a non-starter. I think that there will have to be some air travel. It's just a matter of who goes where by air.
More with Mike Kemp in a moment.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from US College Hockey Online.
We're talking with Mike Kemp, the Associate AD at Omaha and Chair of the Men's Division I Ice Hockey Committee. Mike, one of the things that a lot of people have been wondering about, speculating about, and offering opinions about is how the teams are going to be selected. We know you're going to have as you mentioned, the auto bids from the four leagues, but at large remains a big question. Are you moving along in that direction, and what can you tell us about how that is going in the process of determining criteria?
Yeah, the criteria is, I think the criteria for determining at-large teams and for the seeding purposes, we will follow basically the same criteria that were going to be used in formulating what would be the pairwise comparison. You're going to look at one-loss record. You're going to look at strength of schedule. You're going to look at head-to-head results. You're going to look at results versus common opponents. All of those factors in, but because of the fact that we will not have cross-conference play universally across the country. There is some, but it's very limited. We'll have to be those comparisons within conferences, and then we're going to have a bit of subjectivity in it. It's unavoidable this year, which makes it challenging. We have introduced for this year regional advisory committees in which there are coaching representatives from each one of the conferences, and we are meeting in an East and a West version to help us discuss all of the teams that would be under consideration as within each one of the conferences, to give us more of a broad-based opinion from the coaching body as to who those 16 best teams might be. So it's going to be a year that is going to be challenging. It's going to be interesting. And it's going to be hard to do. But I think we have a format which we've used in the past, which is the pairwise. We have the parts that go into the pairwise that will help us to, I think, formulate the ideas and the thoughts of who those 16 best teams are. It's going to be interesting, but there's going to be an eye test factor. That's one of those things that can't be avoided.
When we look at capacity, you mentioned 25%. That could conceivably mean almost 5,000 people in the building in Pittsburgh. How are things going with working with the local committee in Pittsburgh, and how are they making progress on getting ready for the tournament?
Well, they've been just great to work with. They've hosted it before. They've hosted other NCAA events. So they're knowledgeable of what the expectations are. They're knowledgeable of what the needs are by the NCAA to host a Frozen Four or an NCAA championship event. And so they've been really good. Now they're working with their local, health department in the state to get clarification as to what the final number will be for attendance at that championship. And so that is still undecided and will be something that we'll work through and hopefully have an answer before too long, and the NCAA will react accordingly. But they've been great to work with up to this point in time, high expectations.
As far as arrangements with teams and so forth, I know that there are going to have to be some limitations on that. We understand things like Fan Fest and a lot of that, and the autographs and parades and so forth will have to go by the wayside. Are there other things that are being put in place for teams that are going to be special for this?
Oh, I think, this is going to be a year unlike any other. And so a lot of the things that people have come to expect, come to know about and enjoy in the tournament will be different. The Fan Fest, as you say, is going to be something that is not going to take place. Neither will a kickoff banquet for the teams participating. Measures to keep student athletes safe and away from each other while they are interacting within the building will all be part of it. And of course, with what we're experiencing in all Division I college hockey today, testing requirements that are going to be in place will be extensive, and will be put. They'll have to be testing before we even get teams exposed to each other in the building. So it's going to be a very different year by all accounts, which it doesn't mean it's going to be worse. It'll just be different.
Now that you've had some experience with the pod, and I'm sure your whole athletic department had to be very involved in that with the NCHC pod, are there some things that you learned from that you can apply to this tournament?
I think so. That was one of it was a great experience for us. Just the entire planning of the pod, to know, what we needed to do from safety protocols to cleanliness to, cleaning between practices, between games, and how to, move people safely through the building. All of those things were really beneficial for us. And I think That's something that I'm very proud to be able to bring to the committee and to our discussions as we go forward with planning the NCAA tournament, because having gone through it for a month and having had all 8 teams in the building for that entire period and play 38 games where we did not have a case crop up as part of our experience here in Omaha, I hope that we can bring that same knowledge and experience to the NCAA tournament so that we can run regionals and the Frozen Four safely.
The one question that I keep having in the back of my head, and I've mentioned this to some commissioners because it could happen in their postseason tournaments as well, but if a team were to have a number of COVID cases pop up in the middle of the tournament, is there something in place to deal with that, whether it's delaying games or going as far as maybe having to disqualify a team? Is that something that's been, I assume that has to have been discussed by now?
That subject has been brought up. We have not got a conclusion. It would be difficult, I think. We'd like to think there would not be, but in reality, it probably would be difficult to, let's say, postpone a game if it were required to be postponed for 2 weeks. As you know, if you knock a team out because of COVID issues, it's a 14-day quarantine, and that would be probably something that would be something that couldn't be done. But that is something that is being discussed on what to do in that type of situation. And so looking at that'll be something we'll address as we get closer to the championship.
I think that is the fear that a lot of people have as they head down to the postseason, that suddenly a team might be taken out for the wrong reasons. COVID, that would be a horrible way to end your season. Mike, before I let you go, ESPN, are they in as a partner still with all of the tournament from the regionals through the Frozen Four?
Yes, they are. We're very fortunate in that case. They are involved with us all the way through, so we will be able to be having the games for everybody's enjoyment across the country throughout the entire tournament. So we're real positive about that, and we're obviously it's a great partnership with them, and we look forward to bringing the games to everybody as they take place.
Yeah, no year more important probably than this to have games on television with limited fan attendance. But Mike Kemp, listen, we wish you the best of luck as you get down the stretch of the regular season here. Hopefully get the NCAA tournament determined, played, and done so safely and healthy. So, Mike, we appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up with you as we get closer to the Frozen Four.
Thanks very much, guys. We are looking forward to a great tournament. The teams are, I think the excitement around college hockey is going to be really just geared up here as we go forward. I think people are excited about seeing it, so we're looking forward to bringing it to everybody.
That's Omaha Associate AD Mike Kemp. He's also chair of the D1 Men's Ice Hockey Committee. And Jim, I know they've been very busy, and it sounds like they've got a lot of this pretty well figured out.
It seems that way. I'll be interested. I know the announcements on a lot of things that, regional location and criteria should be out soon, maybe as soon as today, we're hearing. When those come out, I guess we'll see exactly how tuned in everything is and dialed in. But I feel like you've got, some very good minds, not just from the NCAA, but the entire committee, that have been through these tournaments before, that have been through a lot this year. You hear Mike Kemp talking about what he learned from the Omaha pod, as he was kind of the director of operations for that whole exercise back in November, December. I have concerns, though. I think the question I asked at the end of what you do if a team gets COVID middle of the tournament is the biggest concern this tournament faces right now. I don't know what the answer is. I know at this point we've heard it enough that you're not going to have this tournament pushed back, delayed. They want to play this tournament on the dates that it's scheduled. There's no wiggle room. This isn't basketball, men's basketball, where there's so much money involved. They would move games. They would change days. I feel like if a team were to have COVID and be unable to play, you would probably have to find a way to use some sort of a forfeit rule. That is my biggest concern of this tournament. The same goes with the postseason tournaments as well. But I trust the NCAA. I trust this committee to get it right. People might not like it, how they're going to select teams. They might not like how they're going to place teams in regions. But you've got to just accept it this year. This committee knows what they're doing. They'll get that part right.
It's also good news that there should be able to be fans in the building. 25% is the number the NCAA has set for all winter and spring tournaments. And it's all going to depend on local municipalities. We know that they've been working really hard in Pittsburgh for it. If they could get 25% in the building, 4,500 to 5,000 people in PPG Paints Arena, that will provide some pretty good atmosphere, but that's still going to be a ton of work getting people through the doors, and who knows what other things will be required as far as testing or vaccinations and so forth. But that is somewhat good news.
I think it is good news. I think that there's going to have to be a lot of safety protocols put into place, as you kind of alluded to. Will you have to have a vaccine to come in? Will you have to have a test, within 48 or 72 hours of each day, or does one test get you through the whole Frozen Four? Who knows? But for fans, I think fans will do whatever they can to see their teams play in the Frozen Four. So it feels like they're going in the right direction. 25% should allow for a lot of social distancing. Hopefully they'll, enforce stuff like mask wearing. That is something that always concerns me as you start to put larger crowds. And I looked at the Daytona 500 the other day, and I think they had 30,000 fans in the stands, and they required them to have their masks on when they came through the door, but they never enforced wearing it when they were inside. And you saw thousands of fans unmasked. So I have those concerns. I'd like to see the safety protocols followed, but the most important takeaway from, I think, our conversation with Mike Kemp is the NCAA is doing everything in its power to make sure this tournament gets played safely, but completed, and we don't have another interruption and cancellation. That, I think, is really important for college hockey.
Agreed 100%. And that'll do it for this week's edition of USCHO Spotlight. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.